Hey everybody, we're going to be quickly going over some of the content that I hope to see in the future of Guild Wars Reforged. Uh, I think some of this content is stuff we know we're going to get, but most of it is stuff that we're just hoping to happen, and this is my personal list of what I'd like to see. So first up, new Minipet Quests. We don't know for a fact that we're going to get quests to do these, but we do know that as of the latest, the 2025 Extra Life fundraiser that ArenaNet had done, they're adding new mini pets to Guild Wars 1, and we don't know how we're going to acquire these. They might just go into the pool of birthday presents, so maybe we'll get like a year 8 birthday present or something like that, and they'll end up in that pool. But I think it's also viable because the last anniversary we saw quests get added to go and get mini pets that were previously unobtainable for us to see new ones as well. So I think it's pretty likely we're going to get some new quests to go and get those new mini pets. Um, Off the back of that, and talking about new quests, if we're talking about content that is likely to come in the future, if there is content, I think new quests and content in general, specifically something kind of like a bonus mission pack, is pretty likely. So they've set up a store in a way where in the future, if they do want to monetize things, they have the structure to do that. Creating DLC for them is a lot more easy with this structure. So I think that that is one of the most likely things to happen is we see something sort of like the bonus mission pack in scale and size. It's not going to be either North level in terms, it's not going to be an expansion or anything like that, but I think that we could definitely see, a few quest lines locked behind a $5 to $10 purchase. Something else on that same note that I think we could see potentially is pre-searing quests. They've kind of hinted at some pre-searing stuff in their tweets. We don't know if this is just ambiguous of them, speaking of people coming back to play pre-searing, but I think that if they were to add new content, pre-searing is one of those places where they can go and add stuff like that. Adding new quests there is pretty straightforward. The only thing that shies me away from that is it's a little bit harder for them to monetize that, I think, because obviously pre-searing being what it is, there is no real example of having a bonus mission pack in pre-searing, at least as of now, so it might be a little bit harder for them to do. Third on the list, new skills. I think we saw it with the 20th anniversary. They added in a bunch of new skills, and they're all PvE skills specifically. I think that new skills, if we were to get any content, would be one of the things that we could see. It's pretty simple for them to add in new skills but not modify existing skills, because adding in those new skills, especially if they're PvE skills, means they don't have to balance them for PvP, and they don't have to balance them on monsters specifically, unless they're adding them with new content, in which case they're already going to be doing that. But yeah, I think new skills are pretty likely. I think we'll see more PvE skills if we get new content. Fourth on the list is a hardcore title. So right now there is no official hardcore title, but something you could do in game is you run /deaths. You can actually see how many deaths you have. So something they could do is add in some kind of title where you have to beat each mission without dying, for example. Or they could just add in a full hardcore title where you have to beat all the missions in a campaign without dying. And if you do that, you get the title, the one of 3 for each of the campaigns. So I think that's something very likely. It's pretty much just a single flag they'd have to add into each of the missions to check, it's basically just when the mission ends, check the deaths. If they've not died, give them the title. And I think that that would be a very large release for something that is essentially a small change. People would get pretty excited about that. We saw a lot of people recently playing hardcore, and I think that it is just a given that they're going to eventually do this if they decide to release more content. Fifth on the list is Prophecies heroes. So right now there's only like 3 or 4 heroes you can get in Prophecies, and most of them are actually tied to the other expansions. So you need Eye of the North to get some of the heroes, or you need Factions or Nightfall to get those heroes. But I think that something we could potentially see is them adding heroes into the earlier areas like Ascalon. So right now, when you're doing the Prophecies campaign, you have to kind of just do it with henchmen. And that's not really ideal, I think, for newer players when they're talking about improving the game for newer players specifically, the early experience and such, especially around when they're talking about this controller stuff and all that. I think that replacing the need for this and exposing people who are playing the Prophecies game to heroes sooner would be a big benefit to the game. It would also kind of take away from the problems that we have right now, where people are often recommended playing Nightfall first over both other expansions, purely because of how fast it is to start and the heroes you get access to. So I think that that's something that is pretty likely. If they're going to add content and they're going to add new quests, I think them adding something like heroes into early Prophecies would be a great change. Next on the list is Zaishen Coin access. So one of the things that I think that uh, new people struggle with, especially, is even knowing that Embark Beach exists. So not really straightforward unless you open the map and specifically see, you're like, oh, here's Embark Beach. But here you have these Asian missions and such that you can do, the bounties and the vanquish, and these give you the Zaishen coins, which they have a lot of really cool rewards tied behind them. It's something I would love to see, but I don't think it'd necessarily be on their plans, would be to expand this system. So giving more access, more ways to get coins. I don't know if that's, putting them at the end of dungeons as rewards, putting them as new quests, or maybe we get a new Zaishen mission flag of some different type of quest. Not sure what that would look like, but I think giving more access to this stuff to the average player would be a very big benefit. Right now, if you're a player, you're wanting to farm up some of this stuff, doing these Zaishen missions, getting like 100 Zaishen coins is a very prohibitive and hard experience for a new player, and I think that for them to improve this, it would have a pretty big benefit, and just promote that existing content that already exists. They also could technically try to take some of these rewards, like these runes that let you upgrade your gear, or a celestial sigil, for example, or the heavy equipment pack. They could put these as rewards in new content as well, and that could be a different way to do that. Personally, I would rather they just push people to the already existing function for it by giving them coins. But yeah, that's always an option as well. Uh, Seventh on the list is Polymock. So I think that's something that a lot of us loved specifically about the Eye in the North expansion. Something we could see in the future was Polymock. So this is essentially the Pokemon version of Guild Wars. So you go in here, you have your pieces, which are your different characters that you use to fight, and I think we could see an expansion of the Polymock system. It would be pretty simple, I think, for them to add new Polymock quests. As you can see, you could pick your pieces in here and pick which one you fight as, and then you go into a little duel where you're fighting this like little pseudo Pokemon thing with this bar of skills that are unique to this mode. Uh, Something that a lot of people don't know is there actually are a lot of Polymock pieces designed uh, for the enemies that fight that never got given or made available to players. So I think that that's something we could potentially see, is maybe they bring those pieces as new content, quests to do in Eye of the North to get those Polymock pieces, and then new fights to do to go and do these Polymock battles. Let's go ahead and get out of here for the next one. Now we're getting more towards the side of the list, which is a little bit more Copeium, a little bit of HOPEIUM here, but what I would love to see is my eighth thing on the list would be them to revive two Primeval Kings. This is a zone I think that kind of got lost to time. So this used to be a very, very important zone when it was just Guild Wars Prophecies. And what you would do here is you go into this Chaos Rift, and this is essentially a PvE zoned version of the Hall of Heroes, which is a PvP zone. And in here, you could farm these enemies, and you used to be able to get ectos, and you get them in a decent amount. So you're in the underworld. This is a different part of the underworld, but you could farm all of these mobs and go on to the next section and farm those, and you used to be able to get a decent amount of ectos in here. And I think that if they were to revive the drops of this zone, I think that it would bring some life to it. And I don't think it would be too detrimental to any of the rest of the content. You still have to go to Underworld Info for the best drop rates, obviously, of getting ectos, or buying them from players or from the vendor. But I think that that would be a cool way to revive this content and get people to come play this again. Another thing I had on the list for number 9 was removing the walled gardens that are in the latter 2 campaigns, so Infections and Nightfall. When you're playing these campaigns, something really confusing to new players is you actually can't just run and unlock all of these zones. You have to do specific quests, otherwise the doors of these zones are shut. So a lot of people use something called a gate glitch to get around this, but I think it would be great if they would come through and actually just remove that restriction altogether. I think that at the time, it made sense to do that because there was so many people playing, but I think nowadays you just kind of run into scenarios where people just get confused, where they're just out exploring, they're playing the game and just running around, and then they run up to one of these and they're like, oh, I can't get in here, well, what do I do? And I don't know how to get into here. And then they go and Google it, and then you end up like, oh, I have to do like 4 quests to get up to this, and you're like 4 quests away. And I think that removing these walled gardens would just be beneficial to everybody. I don't see any reason to arbitrarily limit people from going to further missions if they want to walk through zones to get there for whatever reason, or run through zones. I think that it's perfectly okay personally, and they should just remove that arbitrary restriction. It's mostly bad in factions. Nightfall does have some of it. I think that this one's fine. So, for example, as a Nightfall character, you start here and you don't get to go to the mainland of Nightfall up here until you do console and docks. Stuff like this is fine, right? But I think that once you get into Sunspear Sanctuary, for example, you can't run over to Condor Crossroads until you have the right missions. You can't go into the zone at all, and it just, you end up with a wall that prevents you from going into the different zones. I think they should just get rid of those completely. I think we would see a lot less confusion around that, and just let people play the game. People are going to do the missions and stuff still. It's not really going to change any of the gameplay elements. So for the final thing, and this is probably the most HOPEIUM out of the original list, I would love to see an Ironman title and maybe an NPC tied to it to make you select it, similar to OSRS. So at the beginning of the game, you talk to this NPC, and essentially when you talk to them, you get the title, or you get a flag in your account that prevents you from using vendors. I don't know exactly how they would want to implement this, and why this is mostly HOPEIUM is there's kind of a bit of a question on, where do you limit it? Do they have access to heroes? Are are you able to talk to a merchant? You kind of need to be able to get salvage kits. You probably want access to those lockpicks, but and maybe you want the crafting merchants as well, so you want access to these crafters because that's the only way to do certain stuff. And obviously the armor vendor, there's no other way to get armor other than going through a crafting vendor, so this is something that they would have to exclude as well. But then you don't want to have things like buying from the material trader, for example, because that's not very Iron Man like. If you're having to buy from the trader, the idea is, I think, you farm your materials. So I think it would be a lot of work for them to do, but you would see a pretty big resurgence in players to this game from something like that. They also could consider, like I said, no heroes, so making it a solo Iron Man thing where you can't group up with anybody at all. You have to play completely solo with no heroes and no henchmen, and that's something that I do on this Ranger, for example. So we've beaten all the campaigns except Nightfall fully solo without any heroes and henchmen, and yeah, that makes a fun twist to it as well. So I think that that's something they could do, but it's more on the HOPEIUM side. Getting into the complete HOPEIUM side, something that I would love to see is them to change the event frequencies. So right now the Halloween event's once a year, and the Christmas event is, I think, twice a year. I think we have Christmas in July, which is part of the Christmas event, and then we also have the regular Christmas event. And then there's the Wayfarer's Reverie, when all of the bonuses happen, and the anniversary celebration. I think that they should spread those bonuses in the Wayfarer's Reverie out more. So basically just all of the major events should get the same bonuses. But ultimately, I think they just need to make all the events more frequent as well. So why can't we have, a monthly event essentially, like having Halloween, Christmas, Easter on rotation every month. I think that it would be a lot better for players. Obviously, it would cause an influx in the amount of materials and stuff in the game, but I don't think it would be detrimental. I think you would see more people being able to engage in that content because it's happening more often. I know a lot of people go to play, like the anniversary update, for example. They don't get the proof, but because they're playing the month after the anniversary and they didn't realize when it was when they're just coming back, or all the new players with Reforged coming in, like they're not gonna have proofs, but then they're gonna be looking up build guides and they're gonna see together as one or whatever, and they're gonna be like, oh, I want that skill, and then they're gonna have to ask somebody, and it just ends up being a thing. So that's something I would like to see. The next one on the Copeium list is balance updates to existing skills specifically. So I don't think that this is something we're likely to see anytime soon. This is more in the realm of, if this goes well, they release future content and then the team gets bigger. Maybe we'll see balance updates, but, stuff like the current Shadow Form balance, the current Mesmer skill balance, like E-Surge Mesmers and Heroes, uh, they, they actually really could likely use a nerf, but I think more than likely at this point in the game's lifetime, it's unrealistic for that to happen, mostly because I don't think they're going to want to make players who had all those things set up mad. What would be good is to see them kind of bring back some of the old builds, so like the 55 monk, for example. It used to be way better. They actually have nerfed it down some since some of the early patches, and I always thought it'd be cool if they, have a 55 monk unnerf weekend. So you bring back the 55 monk for a weekend as an event, and you can play the original 55 monk just kind of for fun. And maybe they even leave something like that in place. There's so many modern builds that are kind of stuck in the way they are, and there's some old skills that just don't get looked at. Water magic on Elementalist is a good example of something that it's just not as good as most of the other stuff that exists. And I think that there's some small changes they could do to skills that would be good, but I think they're likely hesitant, like I said, because the monsters in the game in PvE use all the skills. Even though there is a PvP to PvE split, I don't think they're going to want to change skills with potentially affecting monsters and then causing issues down the line. Next on the list would be a new event. So it'd be very cool to see just a completely brand new event, and I think that could be something we see potentially. So whether that would be like maybe they do an extra life specific event, or I don't know, maybe they do like a new Halloween event or something like that. I think that it's complete copium that would happen, but it would be pretty cool. It would allow them to add some new content kind of separate to everything else. But yeah, I don't think we're likely to see it, but it would be cool. And then the second to last, a new class. So this is obviously complete copium, but during the extra life thing, they were showing off some of the the scrapped Utopia classes that they were kind of in planning stages for. So they showed off some images of Summoner, which was one of the classes that, it had summon abilities that I guess made it unique, different to the Ritualist and Necro. But I think a brand new class would be something that, while it's very unlikely to happen, would completely revitalize the game. You would have people coming back all over just to play that new class and just to see how it plays. They could throw it in each of the expansions, even if they're at the point of adding that new class, or throw it into new content if they're creating it with new content. But yeah, I think a new class is on the list of very, very unlikely things we're ever going to get, but would be very cool. And then the final thing on the list, I would not be able to finish this list off without mentioning Utopia. Obviously, we all kind of knew that there was an expansion we didn't receive, that they ended up pivoting and going to Guild Wars 2 for. So if we were to get some big content, we're talking this is like a year or two down the line. Things are going so well. They're making millions of dollars off of Guild Wars 1 because people have just started playing again, and they hire a full dev team to manage it. I think that what they would be looking to do at that point would be Utopia. But like I said, that's super unlikely. I don't think we're ever going to see that. And just as a final bonus meme, something we could potentially see as part of those new quests would be like the Guild Wars Beyond content for Nightfall. So we were supposed to get Guild Wars Beyond content for Nightfall, but we never got it. So I think that that actually is something probably likely if they were to do like a bonus mission pack for Nightfall, you would see that. And that's part of my hope too, with them releasing this new DLC structure and with them bundling all of the core campaigns into one game, is we see them kind of just take some freedom and release little bits here and there of content that we can do in any of the expansions. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Let me know your thoughts and what you'd like to see in some of this content. If you think they should drop everything and nerf all the skills, or drop everything and buff all the skills, or make a legendary mode, which is like hard mode but harder. Yeah, just let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe. We'll be playing on December 3rd as a new character. I said in my last video, but I'm not sure what I'm going to play yet. Probably Elementalist, but we're still kind of on the edge. It's definitely going to be in Prophecies to start, though, at least for me. So, but yeah, we'll be rebuilding a new account just so I can link my Steam account, my Steam Guild Wars 2 account to that. So, yep, thank you for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one.